what did you feel like you had to do to be able to support what is considered a successful man to raise a successful family and have
well,
the life you guys want to live?
that was a key for us, or for me as a woman. I mean, we decided early on. I was pregnant by 27 with your sister and Victoria, not Diana. And Dad had just switched into the mortgage business. So our life was different. I mean, he was gone. And as we had decided that I was pretty much going to stay home once he started, doing well. During that pregnancy, you went into a different job. Mm-hmm. So our focusing on that, I never, ever would say, I'm home alone, because we lived in Hopatcong. It was pretty far from where I grew up. You have to come home. I need you home. I have to eat, or I have, stomach ache. Or never asked Dad to come home because he was working too hard. We just didn't do that. And I see young people, and I think it's great how guys are trying to help their wives. I think it's awesome. And women's work now outside the house, so you both have to share it because they're working just hard. I chose not to do that. So for me, I knew my role was going to just let him go, let him fly, and be supportive all the way of that. And I think that's what worked. I never, ever said you have to come home. And he put in hours that were crazy, but it was for what I knew was the betterment of our family. So I didn't ever stop that.
And thank you for that, because that matters. In a working relationship, business, it works. In a marital relationships, that's one of the key variables in any successful relationship. She supported what I was doing and vice versa, right? So, I didn't have to worry about, I got to get home because I have to change the baby or I have to feed the baby.
And for some guys, it's perfect. If their wife is working too, it's fine. They have to help. But I didn't want to have to. Right. We decided as a couple we were going to have me stay home, so that was cool. So we didn't, but we knew our roles and decided that was okay for us. Our roles were cool.
Yeah. That worked. Yeah. And that's still, I think today is something that potentially
not that I never called and complained once in a while. I would, but it was,
well, of course
when all four of them were
right. And it would be frustrating for me too, a lot of times, because I wanted to come home. I mean, what parent who loves and adores, their children doesn't want to be home and see the best part of them, right? The hard part is the all day, the crying, the whining,
I would call sometimes and hold the phone out.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it would get hairy.
And I'd be like, all right, I got to get home because I want to be home. And I know my being home changes the dynamic of that environment. As soon as Dad walks in, the kids are excited.
Yeah.
And it gives Mom a break. And that's necessary also. So in an ideal scenario, you play and work off of one another, you help one another out. And I think today, though, it's a little lopsided because, and again, I want to say across the board, but men and women in that relationship of a marriage and having children, they think they both have the same amount of responsibilities and roles, whether it means I want to be a career person, whether you're the male or the female.
Well, they have to share it.
Or they fight and struggle. Well, no, my career is more important than yours. No, I'm better at it. Well, hold on. You have to have a two-person working household. Yeah, you have to differently.
You have to know what you're good at.
You have to differently figure out how to balance that. And childcare comes into play and some of those other things come to play. We made the decision, and I want to be really clear about this. I was making $25,000 a year. You were making 10.
14.
14. Okay. We were not by any measure. No. We're in the luxury of things. But when I started to feel like, all right, I'm on the road, I'm going to now be successful at this. And we had Victoria in 1995. The decision was made.
No, 94. John was not. We had 2 by 95.
I'm sorry. Right. But 90. You're right. But I think you stopped working and that was it. Yeah. And I never looked back. And it wasn't like we were making all sorts of great money. It was a hard thing to figure out. But my point is that was the decision that was made to figure out how to manage now this family, which is really in large part, this is like a business. You've got to manage it with understanding the people you're with, the economics that you have to work with, money in, money out, right? Expenses, all of that is a responsibility. So these lessons that you learn over time, the sooner you understand and better understand your role, it helps
whatever it is, it doesn't matter. As long as you two agree on the role, it's cool. Like it'll work if you guys agree on what it is. And that was for us. And I always was, like I said, the kind not to call him crying and say, you have to come home. And we had you 17 months later after Victoria. And, you know, Dad did his own job. Dad would start a new job. And I had no choice but to, you know, buck up and whatever.
Well, I think that's very overlooked nowadays, is how important that support and that trust is between both of you. Like, you identify what your role was, and not nagging and not complaining allowed him to do what he does best. And you hear it all the time, but that the people that are in struggling marriages and relationships, it has to hinder work. And now you're thinking about, instead of focusing on work, everything else that goes on with your wife and your kids and all that crazy stuff.
Right. But just remember, the nagging and all that is, I didn't do that much. I mean, I did some of it, but not a lot. But remember, when Dad did get home, he was present. I didn't have the guy that would come home and then, you know, completely ignore what was going on there either, which is, if that's the case, then every woman would understand, if you're doing this all alone with no help, you can't do it. I mean, it's a lot. So there was, but also knowing that he worked hard, and if he wanted to go play baseball or wanted to go whatever, he was going to do it. But he would golf. He'd golf in the morning so that he would come home in the afternoon for me. Like, it was always things like that. But I didn't get mad if he'd get up and golf. So you have to.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is you both earned the role you guys played, right? Dad earned the right for you not to nag and complain all day and get his work done, because then when he came home,
he was present.
He was very active, and you earned the life of being a stay-at-home mom, which some people glorify and say that must be the easiest thing in the world. But in reality, you earned it by being that support system that handled everything. Right. And when he did come home, he didn't have to worry about having food on the table. He didn't have to worry about the kids being ready for school the next day or whatever it may be, because you did all of that. And I think that is way more important than people realize now. And it's also not even that it's overlooked, it's sometimes frowned upon. Like, why should want, I think some women want that, but they feel almost afraid to say, I want to be a stay-at-home mom and be the best mom that I could be. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this clip, be sure to check this one out right here, because it's just as good, or maybe even better. Cheers.